What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I like to continue the conversation on mental diets, hopefully adding something positive to your mental diet for today. I got a bunch of topics to bring up. Hopefully it's interesting on some level, expands your awareness on another. But I wanted to continue to talk about expectancy, and how we kind of use our expectancies throughout the day, and kind of getting out of this whole idea of like judgment. Because it's really obvious that when you're in your mind judging, constantly judging, oh, this is good, this is bad, well, this is a little bit good, this is a little bit bad, it's a great way to continue cycles of suffering, and so using kind of your existing expectancies to start to shift that is really kind of a benefit, and it's something you can start to practice today, so you can start feeling in the here and now more joy, more peace, more acceptance as things are unfolding, using whatever is happening. And even if it's like difficult, frustrating, whatever, that the ego kind of consciousness is judging as undesirable, instead of like listening to that inner critic, realize that you are the inner critic, and you can start to revise, as Neville Goddard would say, how you're interpreting reality, how you're perceiving it, how you're engaged with it, and expectancy is a big part of that, because so much of our old kind of mindset is expecting the worst, or expecting danger, expecting worst case scenarios, and unfortunately, as we do that kind of stuff, has a tendency to start to draw what we fear towards us like a magnet, and actually then manifest what we're undesiring, and just continuing this loop of that unconsciously. So to break out of that loop, it's important to for one, kind of stop judging so much whatever's unfolding, and just assume, and this is getting into the law of assumption, where you're embodying the ideal state of being. This is about being, not thinking about thinking of being. One of the things, like I found to be like a stumbling block with like the law of attraction, not to say that things aren't being drawn and attracted, but it's kind of working counterintuitively, so as you're sitting there in your mind desiring some ideal, like you made it moment, you're constantly rejecting and repulsing that away in the present moment, instead of attracting it by being in your mind. As soon as you're thinking about it, you're separating yourself from it. And so the faster you can kind of catch yourself doing that, the easier it starts to become to you can kind of bring yourself back to the here and now through focusing maybe on your breathing is a good way to do that. Thinking of like, who was doing the breathing before you became aware of breathing, and then combining the conscious and the unconscious in one single breath starts to get you out of your mind, gets you to draw back into the present moment, and helps you to refocus, especially if you're starting to spin out, you're starting to spiral in your thoughts and thinking, and maybe like suffering cycles, worst case scenarios, trying to plot and scheme, manipulate to try to control outcomes. That's a pretty big red flag that you're kind of depending on your old way of thinking, your old mindset. Because when it comes to expectancy, you're expecting good and evil. You're expecting bad and good. Instead of depending on the power within, which is your connection with God, your Creator, who is love and only creates love, that has no opposite. And so moving forward into a different expectancy, is not to, I would say, like be reactive to the fear, reactive to like the fear and love kind of imaginings, but to realize that it's a possibility. If I stay in my old mindset, it could happen where I unconsciously draw fear and suffering to myself. instead of like, starting to react and get afraid and then kind of making that worse, at that, in that very moment, start to expect love instead of fear, because God only creates the love. You are the one that's creating the fear, and the fear is only really existing in your own mind. It's happening in the here and now. Whenever you're anxious, or maybe get like drift into states of like maybe scarcity, or any of these kind of errors of thinking that you're separate, like you're separate from God, separate from the situation, separate from people, separate from everything. There's all these separate wills. Your body has its own will, nature has its own will, finance has its own will. You're all of this kind of shit. Instead of realizing that there's only really one relationship, and that's what we're kind of developing more and more so in the here and now. It's a process of like realizing that your consciousness and in your inner conversations, your beliefs, all of these things are being externalized, by your creator, like a big mirror to show you your concept of self. And so, as your concept of self is starting to align more and more so with the new, like the born again version of you, which is like your true identity, your identity in Christ. The more you start to understand what that means, the more your awareness expands on that. The more that you'll see that reflected out in your day-to-day life. That you'll tangibly, physically experience and walk through, and go from having a type of like, I don't know, knowledge, I guess. It's like, oh, there's esoteric knowledge. You can read the Bible, you can read it 1,000 times, but if you don't ever apply it, you're lacking wisdom. It's like, playing like an instrument, for example, same type of thing. You can go from teacher to teacher to teacher, theory to theory to theory, idea to idea, genre to genre, all these different all of it's expanding awareness of a learning music, but unless you're playing it and practicing it and doing, you're kind of missing out on the actual thing. It's like so many examples of that too, and it's one of those things. You're only ever doing it now, though, so it's like, you just catch yourself, not shame and guilt yourself if you drifted onto like a rabbit hole. You watch culture for the past couple of years of clock time. It's just like, a lot of people went, oh, there's some new threat to worry about and rage against and react about. And, you see people doing that for the past couple of years, but then they come back. It's like, hey, it's still now. You're going to keep spinning out on this narrative, or are you going to, choose to feel at peace right now, to experience oneness, connectivity, being. It's such an experiential thing. It's like trying to explain flow state to somebody who's like constantly just being distracted and not doing that. But it's not the mental activity. It's just being engaged with the here and now. And a part of like the breathing helps you engage with the here and now and get out of like your mind about it and in these stories and everything else. And these ultimately negative expectations, which I feel like is another way of like kind of defining hope. Hope is having like a positive expectancy, and faith in itself is like the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And biblically, it's our faith that pleases God. So it's like as we embody these states of being, through kind of applying the law of assumption, just like you've already been blessed, kind of mindset. It's like everything that you desire it, that because God gave you that desire, and in that, the means to its manifestation has already been come up with. It's like you don't have to invent how this is going to happen. It's like you have to allow, realize that when you're in your old mindset of separation, where you're separate from these desires, separate from love, a lot of different ways. Ultimately, almost feels like love is a threat, to this old like fearful mindset, because perfect love casts out fear. So it's like as you kind of align more and more so with love, that threatens this identity, this persona that's based on like this idea that you are a separate brain and a body that's separate from everything else, and it ultimately even that is an illusion. It's a create something you've created, and you can let it go then too. And as you do that, start having more positive expectancies that today's the day that your life is changing for the better. Today's the day things are becoming more and more into flow, more harmonious. You don't have to sit there and mentally come up with the fucking game plan. God already did the game plan. God created the game plan, and you're perfectly where you need to be in that. It's like, don't sit there and like start pointing your finger at others like, oh, look at this person on this pedestal over here, and they're so much more superior. It's like so much of this is your inner state of conscious. It's like ultimately you're seeing God's consciousness externalized. And to sit there and judge, these different things, all it does is it kind of separates yourself from it. Even though you're one with it, you're connected with it. And as you realize that more and more so, you start to realize there's nothing to be afraid of. Because only God is real. Fear is an illusion. Fear is a thinking, in error, and then believing the error, and then it just compounds and compounds and compounds. It's like think in terms of like the ego kind of consciousness, that it so believes that fear is real and time is real, and everybody's separate, and all these types of things. Not to even like judge that and condemn that. It's really getting into like in the present moment, realizing that things are playing out perfectly. It's perfect. You're not sitting there judging it, because you're judging your own self. All of the, because then the kind of I can hear the people. Well, what about all this upside down shit? It's like you're saying that that's not real. You're saying that this type of shit is just a delusion. What are you saying? And it's like that's part of the game. It's you're taking the shit way too seriously. It's a dream, and you're the dreamer. It's like you're getting caught up in the drama of the dream. It's like you take a step back. It's part of the game. Is leaving this idea of duality, and embracing love and oneness. So when these things present to you, to your awareness, realize that in that moment, that's when you choose not to react to fear, but to choose to ultimately, what do you make of this? How do you ask God what to do? When this manifests, you get the opposite land, you get the upside down. A lot of times that's showing you a limiting belief, an assumption in your own consciousness that's keeping you stuck in a cycle of suffering, because you believe that is real and justify the error in thinking. It's so much of the mind is even in thought is leading you down a trail of believing that you're separate from God, and then justifying that because then look what's being mirrored back. This is why I expect there to be drama and chaos and disorder and fucking whatever, and not harmony, heaven, connectedness, love, peace, joy. So you're like using it to justify your belief in separation. Ultimately, we're letting go of that belief. As you do and connect with who you actually are in Christ. Ask the Holy Spirit, hey, I'm starting to believe this fear, this illusion. I know that the fear is what I'm experiencing here in the here and now in the present moment, and that's keeping me separate from feeling peace. I choose to listen to the voice for peace instead of this old mindset, this old expectancy, this old belief, this old assumption that's bubbled to the surface of consciousness. And in that moment, realize that the problem and the solution comes at the same time, because it's only ever now. And so it's like, as you choose to embody your new self concept, which is casting out fear, well, don't be surprised then, as you hold fast in the faith, that you are already basically in heaven. It's about bringing heaven to earth. It's about the kingdom of God, seeking the kingdom, which is I believe is an inner state of knowingness, which then expresses externally more and more so each day as you let go of a lot of the limiting beliefs, the expectations, the expectation of chaos, drama, hell, death, destruction, all of this shit. When you stop and really or focus on love and joy and peace and heavenly things, all of these things that are ultimately a lack of love. So it's easier to start to redefine, as that maybe that limiting belief assumption is mirrored by someone out in 3D, I guess, the world, whatever you want to call the this. Someone mirrors that back to you. It's either an opportunity to extend love or be love at that particular moment, and not to give fear a what do I want to say? Not to give fear the reactivity, the energy, the attention, because ultimately it's an illusion, and it was created by the old identity, by you, ultimately, by you believing that it has some sort of power. I think that's kind of describes the sin of Adam, giving your God-given authority and power to the shadow, and believing that the shadow is real and has power over you. It's like the same kind of like mantra, maybe, of like this repetitive type thing, where you are not the symbols of the world. Everything spiritual has an external symbol, and everything outside of you is conscious, and is part of God's consciousness. You're in like a hologram, a dream. The whole everything, is part of that. It's all connected. And so the more that you're aware of that, the more that you can start to shift these inner beliefs, assumptions, and everything is in relationship. And it's all part of your relationship with God. So as you embody who God created you to be, the external symbols, are only reflecting. It's only a mirror, so it's like you don't change the mirror if you don't like the reflection. It's like, oh, all I see is this frowny face. It's like you are the one that has to smile to see it back in the mirror. So it's like embodying these different expectancies, or these concepts of self. You're able to then be, it's about being, be love, be abundance, be health, be whatever you're desiring through the shadow. You be it through your feeling and at first, and as you persist through these different beliefs and assumptions that are part of your consciousness, that you believe on some level. You can't lie to yourself, and so you get challenged, from this old, inner critic or whatever that's trying to, on some level, be helpful to you, because you created it. You're trying to keep yourself safe from danger. But, everything that you're doing in thought that's causing distress is entirely in your own consciousness. And you're only doing it now. So you can choose to let that go, because you are the one that's doing it. There's not a secondary thing going on. It's part of like the new is embracing, your who God created you to be, and so I just want to kind of share those ideas, share those concepts. You can try them on. I encourage you to, not to say that this is the only way, but it's just like kind of where like I'm at in my walk, and I find it to be helpful. So hopefully it's helpful for you, because we're all kind of in this thing together, and but you got to try, you got to do it, and ultimately go within, and that's the best way to do it. Ask God yourself, and as you assume that God's going to answer you, which God always answers you, um, yeah, you'll start to see that more and more so. So it's like definitely try that on. Start expecting more states of joy today. Start expecting today to be the first day of the rest of your new life of joy and love and you know elevated states of consciousness, new vibrations. Maybe the way to look at that. That don't have the suffering attached to it. It's almost like every thought that you're like kind of thinking in that contains the binary, because it's kind of like you're judging it, and so it's like, trusting in God to unfold it helps me at least stay in kind of more of a flow state throughout the day, not be in the mind as much. And when that starts to happen, you know, you can feel how that starts to spiral things, but through breathing kind of get grounded you back into the doing this as a we thing. It's like God was breathing for me, it was happening unconsciously. I didn't have to think about it, but I'm going to unite my conscious breath with my unconscious and ground back into the present. um, Try not to sit there and judge creation as it unfolds, but to realize that every desire that God's already got it figured out for you, got a means to how it's going to manifest, and it's happening now. It's like no different than your heart's just beating normally and naturally. Everything's, love is being attracted to you normally and naturally. It's when you're in your old mindset of separation where you're repulsing what you actually desire and pushing it away. It's weird, it's counterintuitive, and it's like the more that you listen to that old guide, the more you push shit away, the more fear you experience, the more suffering you endure as a result. Which you can choose in the here and now. Right now, I'm going to choose to occupy a different state. What you want to experience, maybe just feeling safe, feeling good, feeling normal. Allow that to come to you. Don't push it away. Realize that you're already blessed right now. Everything that you could want, desire, which is you just want heaven, you just want love. God's already giving that to you. It's already been given to you. You've already got it. It's like you've been blessed already. You are blessed right now, and that's it. And it's like the more that you just believe that, the more that the more you assume that you're blessed. Assume that you're just, that God's with you and does the work. That you don't have to do the work. God's already done the work in coming up with the plan, doing, brings the people to make the plan happen. All of it, so you can demonstrate your new concept of self. So, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. So with that being said, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate that. I also appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. I appreciate that as well. And until the next now, God bless.